Warning. Today's intro comes with a Seth warning. There will be some language. Just want to let you know. That's right. Got that, Seth?
Fuck the NRA. Their pro-gun policies have resulted in dead children, dead mothers, and dead fathers. I'm Pat Davis, and I approve this message, because if Congress won't change our gun laws, we're changing Congress.
It's Thursday, May 24th, 2018. Yep, it's a Thursday edition. Last week Wednesday, this week Thursday. Why not? Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop podcast. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. In this week's show, SCOTUS rules against workers. Workers must abide by forced arbitration clauses. Welcome to the privatization of our court system. Justice Neil, elections have consequences, Gorsuch wrote for the majority. The ruling has potentially significant implications for the Me Too movement as well. The highlight of the ruling definitely had to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg's blistering dissent. Trump formally announces new gag rule barring family planning clinics that receive federal funding under Title X from providing abortions or referring to patients to abortion services. And the court challenges are dubious because, say it with me everybody, elections have consequences. On the positive side of the ledger, court rules that Trump can't block people on Twitter. No troll-free zone for your highness, I guess. Last week, oh God. Last week was Trump's bromance with Kim Jong Un and their potential soiree, their meetup in the Philippines. Now, North Korea is yanking Donald's chain, warning of nuclear showdown and calling Mike Pence a political dummy. And this just in, literally this morning before we went on air, Trump cancels the Philippine summit. There goes the Nobel Peace Prize. We were not recording last Friday when the latest school shooting went down in Santa Fe, Texas. But, didn't take long for the NRA death cult to start feverishly going through their post-child sacrifice rituals. Guns don't kill people. Guns don't kill people. Guns don't kill people. A report released earlier this month by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration found an unexpected increase in emissions of CFC-11, a chemical banned under the 1987 Montreal Climate Protocol. Scientists say this suggests that someone may be secretly manufacturing the pollutant in violation of the international accord. And who wants to bet we'll find out in the end that Jared Kushner and the Emir of Qatar will be involved in some way. Huge news out of Georgia. Stacey Abrams becomes the first African-American woman to ever win a major primary nomination for governor. Not only that, she won her primary running against a centrist Democrat, Stacey Evans, who ran on the typical corporate Democrat line of shifting to the right. A former executive of Frisco Hospice in Texas admitted to overdosing patients to hasten their death so that the company could rake in the bucks. The $60 million scheme with Nova Healthcare Services owner Bradley and Amy Harris made patients go, this is literally from his tweet, make the patients go bye-bye when the company could no longer profit. Also in Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick thinks that banning doors on school buildings will stop mass shooters. He clarifies his statements later, saying that guns don't kill people. It's the video games and the movies, folks. NFL bans taking a knee during the national anthem because freedom. And in other sports news, City of Milwaukee releases video showing rookie NBA player getting tased for parking in a handicap spot. PA legislators want their nothing burgers medium rare with a side of per diems. The PA House is not expected to vote on much on this rare Thursday session because PA House Democrats, yeah, it could be that too as well. PA House Republicans, their caucus, they can't get enough support on some controversial bills. But the PA Senate passed the pipeline protest criminalization bill with the happy support of several Democrats. Word has it that the House, however, doesn't have the energy to take it up. PA Democrats all shaky after those DSA wins. I didn't even see it coming, they said. We saw it coming in February, Sean says. Scarnati pushing hard for open primaries in PA. What is going on with that? Poor People's Campaign back in the Capitol loud and proud. Several demonstrators arrested for what? Tug of war? Sean was there and got some great pics and vids of the action. In a secret process, Daniel Greenstein, former director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Post-Secondary Success Program, he was chosen to be the next Chancellor of Pashi. Who knew? Everyone is jumping on the positive PR blitz, and look, that may pan out. But right now, there's few specifics and lots of fawning over Dr. McDreamy. Just look at that hair.
Oh, he's a doctor.
Look, Greenstein might turn out to be great, but we're going to hold out until we've done our research and see some specifics. And Colleen Bradley renders her writ of certiorari, if I get that word right ever, for the U.S. Supreme Court. In today's last call, Sci-Fi Channel cancels The Expanse just when it's getting good. But Amazon may play the hero in this one. Just like, not going to pay you for it. You're going to give starvation wages for it. But I was in Chicago last weekend, which was why we went a little early last week. I got to see an awesome comedy show at Up Comedy Club of Second City. The show was an all-women show called She the People. It was an awesome feminist review. Got to sample some great beer out of Chicago, right? We'll get into that. And I will say that my favorite had to be the Defender American Stout by Haymarket Brewing. Got to have something called Haymarket if you're in Chicago, right? Pretty good. And Philly Beer Week kicks off on June 1st. Remind everybody, tune into the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org. You can also tune into the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. If you missed the show, go to ricksmithshow.com and click on the Free Speech TV icon in the sidebar, or go to the archives at freespeech.org. I want to give a special thanks to Chris for becoming a member at the $5 a month level. Membership is what keeps Raging Chicken going. And if you like what you hear, you want to support Pull No Punches Progressive Media, well, become a member of Raging Chickens for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. If you're not ready to become a member, hey, make a one-time donation by going to ragingchickenpress.org, click on the Support and Membership tab, click Donate, and you're on your way. But what we really want you to do, folks, just become a member. Go to patreon.com/rcpress, become a member today. And look, if you're already a member or you're kind of not sure what's going on here, well, there's always ways that you can help us out. Like right now, like us on Facebook and give us a review on our page. Follow us on Twitter. And don't forget to rate us and leave us a review on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you listen to our podcast. And even if you don't listen to us on iTunes, just subscribe there, right, and leave us a review. It really helps get this podcast out there. Whew. Man, so Sean, we had like an extra long week this week, and because we went early last week because I was in Chicago, and we're going a little bit early this week too as well, Thursday instead of Friday. But there's no shortages of stuff going on, I guess.
Nope. And just like clockwork, there was another school shooting.
Just another school shooting.
Just another school shooting.
Just another school shooting. Well, I'll tell you, it's like I was thinking about this, I was like, man, we were supposed to be recording on the air, like when that school shooting went down. And, 10 kids, or I guess there's a teacher, too, that was killed in it. But 10 people killed, once again, because of video games, Sean. Those video games did it again.
Yeah. Yeah,
What are you going to do?
I grew up playing video games. I guess I have to watch myself.
Yeah, well, let's...
And, it's also the type of thing, I was thinking about this, and one of the things that, like, the trend that's been going on, it's how, like, well, some of these shootings are revolving around, especially the incidents lately, younger teens going after their ex-girlfriends or going after people who turned them down. And I don't know. It's also like it's that Jordan Peterson right-wing subculture that's obviously playing a hand in this too, yes, right? Yes. I mean, it's that online culture. It's that like incel culture that's popping up. It's that Gamergate culture. And I also feel like a lot of the root of our problems also are ideology or how our ideology is really stricken with like far right evangelical Christianity and how that, women should obey men at all costs, that they're just there to fetch them their beer and slippers, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again.
And if not, you're going to be punished, killed, and
right. I mean,
so
it's like, and again, it's like, step one, kill, right? I mean, that's really where we're at. I mean, we'll go right to what Colleen Clements has been arguing for. I mean, she's not the only one, but certainly she's been out there about toxic masculinity. And this is exactly it. And no, by saying toxic masculinity, we're not saying that any form of masculinity is just bad, right? We're saying that the particular ways in which men are being asked to understand themselves in our culture is primarily now narrowed through violence, right? You're not allowed to have any other emotions, right, other than anger and rage, right? And then so what do you do with that, right? I mean, this is something the advertising agencies figured out a long time ago. Like what you do the way that you sell products and you get people bought into your brand, right, is you create an emotion, right? And then you pretend to be able to solve it with your product, right? I mean, Naomi Klein wrote about this in No Logo ages ago, right? At the turn of the 21st century. Right, but that's exactly it. Gene Kilborn, right, in Killing Us Softly, has been talking about the messages and the images of the way that gender has been constructed is toxic for women, right? But the same is true on the male side of stuff, right? Whereas when you're saying you're going to create this feeling, anytime you have a feeling like the girl that you like didn't want to go out with you, which apparently happened in this case, right? So then
after months of advances, and so finally she just said she had enough of it. And just flat out embarrass the kid in front of the class.
Right. And so because he's embarrassed, right, he has no skills, right? Like men and boys in this culture get no training of how you deal with embarrassment, how you deal with feeling upset, how you deal with feeling sad, how you feel with feeling dejected. No, it goes from embarrassment to rage, right?
Internalizing that rage and just acting out.
Right. And who's there to fill the rage? Like none other than Vulcan and Moloch from the NRA death cult, right? Sit right here. Here is your solution, right? It is the rods of iron, right? And then you can take these things and you go out and you act out in the world. I mean, that you talk about how toxic that is. How toxic that is like subject a debasement of a human being, right? To having one emotion that you're allowed to move forward with, and that is just rage, and then it's at the expense of everyone else around you. It's either do what I say or I will kill you. That is what the NRA death cult is built on.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, this, it pisses me off to no end when I hear people go after like feminists who talk about toxic masculinity, right, and say that they just do want like they hate men. That's not what it is. I mean, how many times we got to say it, Sean? I mean, how many times we got to say it that like there's more options to being a human than killing people with a ready-made weapon of destruction as an expression of your gender. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, and also I feel like from a way, I don't know what's the best way to explain it. I guess from a way of like my standpoint is, we as men are not we're not brought up to explain our emotions. Like, you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And for me, personally, that's been issues I've had for a while. Like, just like, for instance, I just not lost my job, got out like a previous job. But no, like my emotions, like through that whole entire time spiked. And it's like, and I went binging for like the past few weeks and it's just like, holy shit. But it's like, we don't know how to deal with. There's not proper channels available for us to deal with our emotions.
Yeah, and that's it.
And it's like, because we're taught as men not to talk about our emotions,
right? And I think,
or we're not talked about to like explain how we feel about things. I don't know. It's just,
no,
and then
I
couple
hear you,
that
man.
with people who are completely socially awkward and socially inept, and people who are either raised in a Christian homeschooling foundation or a evangelical far right ideologies. I mean, it just seems like we're hitting a boiling point where guys can't talk about their emotions because it's not a guy thing to do. And then you couple that with the online Gamergate stuff that's going on, the online, stemming from Gamergate, the libertarianism, that whole entire pipeline into like that violent alt-right, white supremacist, misogynist world, and then this stuff happens.
Right. I mean, look, in some ways, I think this is a completely reactionary, we've upped the reactionary response in terms of masculinity. So I actually think that there was some progress being made there, right? Where, I can remember when I was in college, for example, discussions, very open discussions about kind of, therapy and kind of talking with people and talking about your emotions and how this is important. And that being slowly kind of finding its way even into representations of men in the media, right? I mean, that began happening. And then like with the election of Obama and this like sharp right turn is that you see a clamping down on that and wanting to reassert some, and again, it's always a freaking fiction. We call it these children of the corn is a reference that Roxbury's been using out here in Harrisburg. You have these like muscular 6'2", blonde haired, blue eyed Aryan type of people walking around downtown Harrisburg, working on all these hard right campaigns in the city, and it's like that type of like mythical culture that we're, chiseled, athletic looking guys. And it's just like, no, that's a lie. No,
like
and it's
that, and that's not how reality is.
No, it's not how reality is.
But that's how they are operating with the white nationalists that are out there, the alt-right. You have to be able to deadlift 250 pounds or 300 pounds. You have to be able to bench press so much. You got to be able to do this. And if someone says no, you punch them in the face.
Well, that's just it. And this is once again, this is
or you just go off on an immigrant or something.
Yeah, like that. I mean, this is the markers of an authoritarian culture, right? When you say that there is this one way of being, and then you have to monitor and discipline the guardrails of like what that way of being is, and then if you step outside of it, you smack it down, right? And that's happening right across the board right now. That's the reactionary movement, and I do believe. Look, at my hopeful moments, I think, look, this is actually the last vestiges of this for a while. Right, because I think that the pushback now is such that I'm hoping, this is where I'll be hopeful for a bit, I'm hoping that the pushback now that we're seeing with the kind of mobilizations like across this country is gonna basically kind of like the light bulbs are going off and making connections across a wide range of things. It's not just Trump, right? It's not just this one group of people. It's a way of approaching things that if we actually truly want to make good on a kind of like a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-gendered kind of democracy, right? Kind of expand the horizons of freedom. Well, then enough of this garbage.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Well, speaking about narrowing the horizons of freedom, right? This week we saw the first, the first step toward the enclosure of the workplace, where we're
going back to the 60s.
Yeah, it is. That's right.
1960s.
Yeah, exactly. We're going, as Rick always says, we're going back to the 80s and the 90s, the 1880s and the 1890s, right?
We're going back to Lochner.
We're going back to Lochner. Right. This is literally this Supreme Court ruling that came down. Again, I don't know how much people are paying attention to this, but basically, in a nutshell, here's the deal. The deal was the question before the court was, look, if employers are basically saying making it a precondition to be able to work there, to be able to sign this paperwork that says that you sign away your rights to go to the court. If you're facing discrimination or you got a complaint against the company or anything like that, you are going to forced arbitration, right? So in other words, instead of going to the court, right, you have to go to forced arbitration. Now, the problem is with this, right? We saw a ruling happening earlier this year, which came down around I think it was AT&T an issue. It was kind of outside. It was more about consumers, but this is in the workplace. Like, so say, for example, we've seen these multiple cases of workers who are getting cheated out of wages, right? And they're getting cheated out, not out of like, $10,000 in week every single week, but a few bucks here and there. Right?
Now, I guess we're going to talk about this more in the last call.
Yeah.
With one of the articles we have up there about the craft beer world. But no, I've been quiet about this for a while and never really wanted to talk about it. But previous place I was working at, we were forced to sign paperwork that if we didn't clock out and someone had to see what time we clocked out, we would get docked pay for that. If we lost a paycheck and we had to get another paycheck issued, we would be penalized $30 or $40 off that paycheck because they had to get that paycheck, reprint it, and sent to the company. This is the type of stuff that I've had to deal with personally.
Yeah.
In order to keep my job, and that choice is lose that job or lose that job and move back out to Philadelphia go back home because I don't have a job and I don't have money for that, or keep my head down and keep on working and trying to do what I need to do.
Right, because here's the issue.
And this is something that affected me personally. And, it's to the point where I never talked about it. And this is actually the first time I'm talking about it publicly. But yes, at my previous employment, we were all forced to sign paperwork that was pretty much them trying to legalize wage theft within the workplace.
Right. And
we pushed back. Mm-hmm. We bitched enough about it to where they said no. Like we're like, no, we're not signing. This is bullshit. This is illegal. This is wage theft. And no, we're not dealing with this.
Right. And that is
you're threatening wage theft.
Right. And that is collective organizing, right? In the face of that, right? And and here's that perfect example, the collective organizing and the pushback. That's the only way that people
and there was only a couple of loud people about it too.
Well, no, and this is the potential silver lining on this. And Rick Smith has been talking about this past week when this ruling has come down. Because so basically, just so people understand what the deal is here. So just if you take even the situation where you're talking about with Sean, if you as an individual worker, right, you find that you get ripped off by your employer, say $5 a week, right, or $30 a month, right, or something like this. It is cost prohibitive to you as an individual, right, to hire a lawyer to sue them for this $30, right, if they refuse to pay you that $30 or $5 or whatever it might be. Right? It doesn't even make sense to you. It doesn't make economic sense to you. You're going to end up paying more in legal fees than you would possibly ever get back from them, right? So the only way that it becomes feasible, right, for these small amounts of wage thefts, right, each individual worker's a small amount, is to form together and have class action lawsuits, right? Because, yes, still, each worker is not going to get back a ton of money from that lawsuit, right? But it's going to be made right in the end, assuming that it has merit and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be made right in the end. Right. And the company, right, is forced to stop doing what it's doing. Right. What this ruling just happened with the Supreme Court is basically saying we are going to say no. If you are employed on there and you have actually signed this agreement, no, you can only go through individual. You make an individual lawsuit. You cannot form a class and go forward with a class action lawsuit. Right. So basically, you've taken that away from workers. And now already you're basically seeing, now Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her dissent from this basically said, Gorsuch, I should say, he went back to this 1925 ruling that basically said, rights of contract, right? This is the liberty of contract crap.
Lochner.
Yep, this is Lochner. This is the Lochner era. There's a liberty of contract crap to say, look, the worker signed it, so they should deal with that, right? Well, now 1925, there was a Supreme Court ruling that basically came forward and basically said, look, people were not respecting this arbitration. So the Supreme Court said, no, you have to abide by the arbitration, right? That if you sign this contract, you can go to arbitration, that's fine. But there was a small percentage of places that did this and in specific instances, right? It was well under, it was 15% or so, 10% something like this in specific instances. Now, over 50% of corporations today, right, require their employees to sign those agreements. And even before, when it looked like this was going to go forward, it was going to be a positive ruling in the favor of corporations, the favor of business. There are already plans, right? And it's been all over the news. Companies across the board are already saying, "Oh, we're going to do this too now." So now, effectively, what you can do is say you take some 50, even if you go up to 75%, you go up to 75% of companies, right? Basically, say that we're going to require our employees to do this to prevent any kind of class action lawsuit, and we know that now we can basically get away with all sorts of.
Robbing our employees blind,
right, and discrimination and all that other kind of stuff, because they're not going to go after us for like $2 a week, right? We'll just call it a fee, right, and say fuck them, right? That's really what it is. The other part of this, though, however, it's ambiguous at this point. But the concern is that once you take away that class action stuff when you're talking about wages, what's to prevent, right, them using the same clause when it comes to sexual harassment, when it comes to discrimination, right? They're gonna push exactly the same thing. Now, there's some disagreement about whether or not that's actually going to apply, but you know what? It's only going to get worked out when it's tested. Right, so more lawsuits are going to have to come forward, right? The fact that they're saying that this does not apply, and there's actually some legislation that's in the works that started back in December, was introduced in Washington by a Democrat, was introduced to kind of to separate out these cases, right? Saying that discrimination and constitutionally protected classes are not subjected to the restrictive arbitration clauses, but that's not through yet. So here we go. You could potentially basically say every woman who's sexually harassed in the workplace, right, can't bound together and say we have systematic discrimination like we saw what happened at Walmart. No, what we're going to do is that you have to do it as an individual. I mean, it's just crazy. And this is the first shot. This is not Janice yet, right? Janice is coming down the pike, right, within the month.
Yeah. And this is, you know what's one thing I'm glad about?
Do tell.
That Jill Stein's going to be picking the next Supreme Court justice. And
yeah, that's good.
She's going to fix this.
Well, Sean, when we live in our own world, everything is possible. So if this might, Gorsuch being on the Supreme Court might apply to us, but if you live in Stein world, right, that doesn't apply to you. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard you made some people mad this week on that too.
Yeah, I do, because I feel like, yes, the people, you do the math, and the people who would vote for Jill Stein, the people who did vote for Jill Stein in some of these states, only brought the deficit to like 5,000 or 10,000 votes, right? Which is not a lot of votes. Say if more people came out and voted, an extra 0.25% of the population, that the voting population came out and voted, and no one voted for Stein, we might be in a different place right now. And I feel like that, yes, Hillary Clinton was not a great choice for president, but she was not going to be as bad as Donald Trump, and as bad as Trump, and really like these people who voted for, who are like the people who peddled this message, the Jimmy Dores of the world. Out here in Pennsylvania, there's this guy named Stephen Grumbine. He runs this page called Real Progressives. It has like a few 100,000 people on it, and you know what he does out here?
Do tell.
Organizing wise, jack fucking shit.
Yep. You
have these fucking charlatans on Facebook and social media who are peddling this message, and they don't do a goddamn fucking thing when it comes towards when it comes towards organizing. And that is my biggest, I'm a real progressive. Well, where the fuck are you protesting the Muslim bans? Oh, you're speaking on Facebook Live for 20 minutes about
it's not
modern
enough.
Economic theory?
Yeah, it's not pure enough, Sean. Protesting the Muslim ban, that's not really radical, man. It's not really.
I'm going to talk about modern monetary theory instead.
Yeah. Which, look, don't knock it. Modern monetary theory is important. But
no, that's where they're going to put their energy at.
No, look,
instead of putting their energy towards organizing workers, making sure unions are thriving, making sure people aren't getting shit on, and making I've never seen any of these people out at any of these events.
No, and look, I have no problem if people want to kind of argue and discuss and put their energies towards.
But that's their whole entire platform.
No. Look, I don't even care if it's all towards modern monetary theory. That's fine, right? You can have that lane. You can have that lane. What the problem is, and this is kind of where you started, the problem is not that you're interested in modern monetary theory. The problem is that you're telling everybody, right, that they should not even pay attention. Don't vote for Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton's bad. Remain pure and talk with us. That's the problem. And the fact is, what bothers me more about this than anything else, right, was just like you see, Neil Gorsuch is a direct result of what happened this election. And again, I want to be clear. I am not saying that the people that voted for Jill Stein are the sole cause, right, to what happened in this election.
I know we've talked ad nauseum about how bad Hillary Clinton's campaign was. And people said, I was like, if you listen to our podcast or read what I write on Facebook or Twitter or on the website, you would know that we've talked about how bad Hillary Clinton's campaign was since November 10th.
Before then. No, I mean, even before then we talked about it.
Yeah, we were talking about how bad and uninspiring that campaign was. But I voted for Clinton because elections have consequences. And that other person...
Neil Gorsuch.
That other person who happened to win the election, happened to win the election, is now driving us into a libertarian wet dream and sliding us into a fascist society, a totalitarian society, and the Supreme Court is going to be ruling like this for the next 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so this happens to do. This is. I swear to God. This is the way I think about this. Is this has to do with our lack of political development, right? On the left, is the fact that everything is in the realm of ideology, right? In these pure spaces, right? Or it's like the crass form of kind of like the Democrats rule, right? Which is just as bad.
It is that Monty Python skit with the People's Judean front and the Judean People's front.
Yeah.
Splitter. Like, that is exactly how the left operates.
Right.
And look where that's gotten us.
Yeah, exactly.
Go play with your spidget finner.
That's what I got to say. But, again, because let's look at the consequence. Because right now we just saw this. Again, we got word of this last week. This has been batting around for a while. But on Tuesday, Trump formally announced this new gag rule. He's bringing back the Reagan era gag rule, right? That's going to bar family planning clinics that receive federal funding under Title X for providing abortions or even talking about it, right? You can't talk about it anymore, right? You move this forward. And guess what? So let's follow the logic here. So there's going to be court cases. They're going to come forward, and they're going to say, no, this is not allowed. This is discriminatory, blah, 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 right? And they're going to challenge it in court. And then what's at the end of that road? Neil Gorsuch, right? Neil freaking Gorsuch, right? And so not only are we in a situation right now where the House is dominated by Republicans, the Senate is dominated by Republicans, you got Trump and you got Pence, and you go right down the list, right? And the leadership that it's out there right now in the White House, you got a Supreme Court, right? That is number one, if they get this through, right? If this gets challenged and it gets rushed to the Supreme Court before the elections, right? Guess what? Woohoo! They're going to get the stamp of approval. And now let's flip it around. After 2018, Democrats are in there and they try to prevent all this stuff, right? And say it requires kind of new court cases. Guess what's going to happen, right? The Democrats may try to put a stop to it, but there's ultimately that buffer, right? That generation-long buffer in the Supreme Court with Neil Gorsuch now being appointed there. Right? And I don't care. Look, I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton would have chosen the most progressive individual like on the face of the planet in our ideal world.
She wouldn't have picked someone like Neil Gorsuch who would fuck over workers' rights, fuck over women's rights, minority rights, immigrant rights, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And that's where the Green Party people are wrong on this.
Right, exactly. And this is what Sam Cedar has always said in the Majority Report when they get in these arguments about this stuff, is he always says, look, what we lost in that election is a
generation's worth of progressive ideas.
Exactly. And the thing is, if Hillary Clinton was in that office, the one thing that we would have is the ability to push her and hold her accountable to a set of ideals that she claims to represent. Not saying that she does, but then you have a wedge and you have leverage. With Trump, we have no leverage on the left, right? So we are basically fighting a rearguard action right now. All the mobilizing, all the organizing is absolutely critically important, right? But you can't freaking sit out elections, right? And we have the opportunity when we get involved to do exactly what happened in the PA primary last week, right? We're having DSA candidates win. Right? And you know what they did? What is so awesome about what those folks did in the DSA, Sarah Imarato, right? Elizabeth Fiedler, Summer Lee. When those people kind of got involved, they said they didn't sit there and kind of like get in this whole label debate. well, I don't know if I want to be considered a Democrat. No, they said we're going to frickin' win this thing, and we're going to start building a power base, right?
And you
That's
know what?
real
Their
politics.
turnouts in those elections were well over 30%.
Yes, exactly. Right? It just basically turned the whole Democratic Party apparatus on its freaking head, right? Because they won, right? And it's not just in Pennsylvania. So that's what we're talking about. Real political organized, real political activism, right, requires you not to live in a pure space, right? Otherwise, you're just a freaking monk is all you are. And go off and talk about your stuff on your high hilltop and leave the rest of us to get to business and stay out of it, right? Because this is for real. People's lives are being negatively affected right now because of this shit. Anyways, there is good news, though, Sean.
What's that?
Trump can't block people on Twitter anymore.
That means Darryl Metcalf and Dalen Leach can't block me either.
That's right. Well, we'll see where this goes because the court ruled on this this week. This was reported, and it was like because Trump was blocking people, but now basically this is how it is. A district court in New York, and this is from The Guardian. District Court in New York has ruled that Donald Trump cannot block people on Twitter because it violates their First Amendment rights to participate in a public forum. The case was brought forward by the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, representing 7 plaintiffs who have been blocked by the president. Right, and we see the same kind of stuff happening here in Pennsylvania. Right, the idea is like, look, if you're going to use Twitter as a public policy mechanism and ways of communicating to the public, you're effectively using it as a tool of the government. And so, therefore, if you block people from that, you are in violation of the First Amendment. So, this is kind of more. Look, I don't want to diminish it, say it's not important. It is important. Right, but I feel it's going to be it's important when it comes to First Amendment protections, and it's also kind of going to be a nice little thumb in his eye, I think, and will have potentially ramifications across the board, so that you can't have these representatives talking only to the people who they want. So that's a good thing, I guess. So okay, in international news, right before we went on air today. The bromance appears to be suspended. The Philippine, the tryst in the Philippines is going to be indefinitely postponed, right? Even though Mike Pence still remains a political dummy, right? So what happened this morning, Sean?
I guess Trump pulled out.
Trump pulled out, unlike a man.
There's one thing I want to know.
What's that?
Will I still get my fucking coin?
Yeah, I don't know. You can get your coin, man. I think you lost it.
I think they're going to sell it at the Trump Tower. I don't know.
You lost your coin and your ribbon. No Nobel Peace Prize for you.
The Kim Jong Un and Donald Trump coin.
Yeah.
That he had the Pentagon mint.
Dude, I think that's just great. The two-headed, the face of Janus coin.
Like the... God, we are so fucked. Just thinking about, Trump had the military mint a coin of him and the vanity behind this. I mean, it's almost like we have Nero, like Nero as our fucking president, or some of the horrendous Roman emperors, who are just like, yeah, this is it, and this is how. I was like, I have a feeling like this is how it's going to end. Not like me personally going to expire, but this is how the big country's going to end. And what's going to happen afterwards is not going to be pretty. Yeah.
And so, I mean, in case anybody missed this one, right, I just want to be clear. So this is, so when Sean Means printed a coin, he's not lying. He's not exaggerating. Right?
Trump literally had the military mint a coin of him and Kim Jong Un facing each other.
That's right.
With the backdrop of American flag.
Right. And the way it says like this, right? It is a red, white, and blue gold coin, right? So it's nice painted there. Trump is on the left-hand side, looking towards Kim Jong Un on the right-hand side. You got the American flag in the background behind Trump, with the North Korean flag in the background behind Kim Jong Un, right? And then it says around the edge, United States of America, peace talks, Democratic People's Republic of Korea around the end, 2018. Right, with little olive branches. Freaking unbelievable. Right, and this was issued by a White House communication agency, a military unit assigned to the president. And the coins are there. All I want to know is, can I please get one? I want a damn coin. I want a coin with this thing because it's unbelievable. So, yeah. So not only is he not going to get that coin, he's not going to get the big coin either. He's not getting his Nobel Peace Prize. Dude, man, I think this has got to be.
He actually thought he was going to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
Dude, he did. He did. I mean,
I know, and this is how delusional.
No, but this is what Kim Jong Un, like, it was like, dang, the guy from, I'm just forgetting his name now, the president of South Korea, they just dangled that out there for Trump, right? So that he would follow along. He would take the carrot and he'd take the bait and he would go right for this thing.
Yeah, he's like the dog or the person that has like the carrot, like the stick attached to their back,
exactly.
like duct taped. And there's like the string and like, hold on this
Which way did he go? Which way did he go? Which way did he go? Oh, there it is. It's unbelievable. He got played so badly on an international scale. And then he's, again, but, it won't make any difference. I mean, so that's crazy. So that's this week. So a couple things. I mentioned this, so we'll kind of a couple things just want to mention again, and then we kind of want to talk just quickly about this NFL stuff and Stacey Abrams. But really quick, this I'm going to put a link of this in the show notes about this Frisco hospice debate in Texas, because I think it was so important because you had the scheme that this hospice company was basically ripping off the federal government, right? Because it was billing Medicare and Medicaid for hospice services. In some cases, they were admitting people to the hospital that didn't even need to be admitted, right? This one woman was who basically flipped and kind of went state's evidence and basically flipped, and she was basically forging documents, right, to get people on the hospice. And what would happen is that they would keep that person in the hospital until Medicaid or Medicare would stop paying benefits to the company, so they couldn't profit after that. And then after that, they would radically increase their pain medication to basically kill them quickly, right? So they were literally killing people in order to profit off it. It was disgusting, right? And in one tweet, the owner Bradley Harris of Nova Health Services, he basically kind of tweeted out, said, "Okay, this one person's got to go, so time to make that person go bye-bye." Right? It's an absolutely disgusting case, and I bring that forward just because this is what happens when you don't have 100% universal health care coverage for everybody.
I know, it's the same thing doctors were doing with overprescribing people with pain medicine over the past 20 years.
Exactly. They would do whatever they could, right, just to manipulate the system to make a profit. And when you have a for-profit system for healthcare, this is what you get. So we'll put a link in the show notes for that too as well. Also put a link to I mentioned this in the onset about the NOAA's report about these CFC 11 admissions, simply because they're finding that there's been this rapid increase in carbon emissions and stuff that is destroying the atmosphere.
No, it's not carbon emission. These are chlorofluorocarbons.
Right, chlorofluorocarbons.
These are aerosols. These are propellants.
Right. But they're finding that actually is also contributing to the carbon content in the atmosphere.
And it's also destroying the ozone hole.
Well, that's what I was going to say, exactly. In addition to destroying the ozone layer. So that you've got this, and they were surprised to find this. They figure somebody is manufacturing. They have no idea why. They think it's in Asia somewhere. That's what they think. And they think that, I wouldn't, we'll find out that this is part of the Trump on China summit. As they were eating their chocolate cake down at Mar-a-Lago, Trump said, "Yeah, it's okay. If you need to have some CFCs, that's fine. That's fine. We'll be fine with that." But that's nuts. And people are really kind of dumbfounded by this because there's actually some cheaper alternatives than using these CFCs, but whatever. So that's not good news. But before we get to the stuff, the NFL stuff, Stacey Abrams, man, in Georgia, that was huge.
Yeah, and she blew out her opponent. Stacey Abrams became the first African-American woman to ever win a major party nomination for governor in his country's history, which is a huge glass ceiling that was broken. I know a couple of the people who are working on those campaigns down there. We met them on our labor tour through the South a few years ago. A couple of the Teamsters organizers from Atlanta, 776, are doing some excellent. I don't know if it's 776. 776, I think, is out here. But the Teamsters local, that's down in the Teamsters statewide local that organizes the port truck drivers, trash truck drivers, and other campaigns down there. A couple of their political people are working with the Working Families Party down there, and they are absolutely killing it. And I mean, they won on a bold, unabashed campaign, with Stacey Abrams having, with one of the main things her opponents were using, that she was $200,000 in debt. And that was one of the things that they were trying to dissuade voters from voting with her. She won with 74% of the vote in an absolutely crushing landslide victory, with an absolute mandate for progressive politics, pretty much. And you know why she took on that debt? She took on that debt because she had to go back home and take care of her mother, and she took on all that medical debt for taking care of her sick mother, which is another symptom that we are going to be facing in this country once, you know, the baby boomers get older, that their kids are going to have to be taking care of the parents, because we don't have a medical system that can do it.
Right.
And we're going to be taking on more debt on top of the student debt that we already have.
Exactly. Which, you know, again, and in this case, I mean, you put that so well. I mean, in this case too, as well, there's been a lot of talk after a series of primaries that have moved forward that this is going to be like, you know, we're seeing this pink wave happen right now, where you have kind of women candidates that are winning.
We're also having progressive women candidates.
Well, no, this is exactly my point, is that you have women candidates who are winning all over the place. What was so important, I think, about this, about what we saw in Georgia, is that, you know, you had two women running against each other. Right, so that you right across the board there. Now, again, we have to kind of factor in the race stuff here too as well. But the candidate that Stacey Evans, right, who she was running against, was running basically that kind of centrist, kind of corporate Democrat DLC line about moving towards the center. You know, we need to kind of like bring in those Republicans in the suburbs, the same kind of messaging that we saw during the Hillary Clinton campaign, right? And we saw a perfect example of this, her just getting blown out, right? That messaging, the messaging about, you know, the traditional, or I shouldn't say traditional, let's just say this corporate Democrat line is just falling on more and more deaf ears, right? And the progressive people that are moving forward, who are basically arguing, saying we need to have universal health care, we need to have free college tuition, we need to stop this this downward spiral that we're in. I'm coming forward with a positive message. They're winning big, right? So Stacey Abrams is like, you know, one huge, in fact, first ever African American woman moving forward to be nominated for governor. Enormous. Number two, right, the kind of Clinton era Democratic Party line goes down in flames, right? And then number three, we got once again grassroots organizing behind this candidate, which is going to is boding well for the fall.
Yeah, and to do it in a state in the Deep South is absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, you know, the people have been talking about this for a while. Democrats, you know, this is the big data people in the Democratic Party have been noticing this for a while. You're starting seeing this gradual shift, and Steve Kornacki was talking about this the other night too as well. The shift in Georgia toward a much more, you know, like they say, blue state, but leaning more liberal, as you have a lot of people moving to like Atlanta and some of the other major cities. That's
Texas
really
is the same thing.
Yes, exactly. And so we're going to see this, like this is going to only increase because the years go by. And that doesn't mean that it's automatic, people, right? So don't get like you think, oh, we just have to wait for the demographics to change. That's not how this works, right? Is that you actually have to offer real things and solutions. It doesn't happen by itself. It's not the weather. Right. Mm-hmm. So Sean, it looks like freedom has been protected in the world of sport this week.
Yes, NFL owners took a knee to Donald Trump.
There you go. Or two knees.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to go there. I was thinking about going there, but I didn't.
Just saying.
It just shows you, obviously they try to impose bans on the players taking a knee or not participating in the national anthem because of the disrespect of the military, which is absolute bullshit. It's the biggest fucking lie of the past 10 years probably in sports. And the reason why the NFL is probably doing this is because they lost a lot of ratings last year. Because
that's right.
The people on the plantation decide to, you know, organize pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, this is what this is. This is slave owner mentality. We're getting to see who the billionaires, you know, the owners here. These are pretty much the modern day slave owner. I mean, this is slave owner plantation mentality.
Yep, that's right. Oh, here's a perfect example. Is that there's here's a statement from her. There's good old. Let me see here. So here, quote, and this is from, who's this? Who's saying this? This is one of the NFL players kind of was in negotiations on this, one of the union guys. So management has chosen to quash the same freedom of speech that protects someone who wants to salute the flag in an effort to prevent someone who does not wish to do so. The sad irony of this rule is that anyone who wants to express their patriotism is subject to the whim of a person who calls himself an owner. I know that not all of NFL CAOs are for this, and I know that true American patriots are not cheering today, right? And because what was cowardly about this move from the NFL too as well is that they hid behind patriotism, right? Saying that we, of course, we're patriotic, blah, 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 blah. And so, again, I look at this as like, this is more of that authoritarianism kind of like stepping in and seeping into our cultural politics.
Yes, I know. I think that the fight that Trump has picked with immigration, with immigrants, going after MS-13, calling them a bag of animals,
yep,
and using that as a way to go after immigrants, and calling the NFL players a bunch of sons of bitches. We are introducing. One of my friends on Facebook earlier today is like, "Can we just start saying we're entering the Third Reich right now?"
Yeah, right.
We are moving at a fast pace, and Trump has been using these issues as a way to drive that racial divide in this country. And the NFL was one of them. And this issue is juxtaposed with what happened to Sterling Brown of the Milwaukee Bucks back in January. He illegally parked his car in 2 handicap spots in an empty parking lot to run into the Walgreens and to run out. And he ends up getting tased 6 minutes into a half-an-hour confrontation with the police.
You're going to the jail.
Yep, exactly.
And the video, I watched the video a few times, and I watched the full video. I found before, not just this clip before. I mean, yeah, he was mouthing off to the cop, but you know what? The cop was escalating the situation and making the situation worse. Over something that should have been a minor traffic violation, this cop took it into his own hands, made the situation worse, and this is something that could have got him killed.
That's a felony also.
Yep, exactly.
And this is why Larry Krasner is District Attorney of Philadelphia. Because of shit like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, all the more reason why people like Larry Krasner are absolutely critical right now. Because, we're seeing this, again, for people who say, okay, Black Lives Matter, okay, that happened. There was this. No, this is happening continuously every single day. And the fact that, it's just and again, no. And frankly,
I'm at the point where police officers, they should have due process when it comes to the bargaining table. But I do not believe they should have due process protected, as a union, when it comes to instances of explicit racism. Because, in my opinion, this goes against what the CIO, one big union type of, industrialist unionism, of unskilled labor and type of stuff like this. This goes against the working class people, and they are not here to protect or serve working class people. They are here to make sure that poor black people stay chained in the communities that they are in.
No, look, this is,
and this
look,
is an
I think everybody deserves due process, period. Right? For every single instance, there should be due process. The problem in my mind is not due process, right? The problem in my mind is that you have the kind of every doubt goes to the police. What's that?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
No, every doubt goes to the police, right? Every time when a police, even though the police are sitting there in full riot gear half the time, fully armed to the teeth and all this stuff, all they have to say is I was scared. And then they get off. They could kill people. They could tase people. Doesn't matter if they're being filmed or not anymore. Right? This is us becoming accustomed to a military-style authoritarian regime. That is the problem. And the police, there are instances which police may have to, right, in extreme circumstances, kind of use deadly force, but not the way they're doing it now. Not to shoot first and ask questions later that they do now. Right, and the fact that again, I argue this in our own union too as well, is that we should be all for Yes, we got to give due process because due process is important. But due process does not mean you protect this person at all costs against, make sure that they do not get any penalty for it. If they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong. All you got to do is you got to show that they were in the wrong, and then you're done.
And I want to end this with the statement from the Bucks organization. Have you read this yet?
No, I haven't.
Tell me what you think about this. I'll read the whole entire thing. The abuse and intimidation that Sterling experienced at the hands of the Milwaukee police was shameful and inexcusable. Sterling has our full support as he shares his story and takes actions to provide accountability. Unfortunately, this isn't an isolated case. It shouldn't require an incident involving a professional athlete to draw attention to the fact that vulnerable people in our communities have experienced similar and worse treatment. We are grateful for the service of many good police officers that courageously protect us, our fans, and our city. But racial biases and abuses of power must not be ignored. There needs to be more accountability. The Milwaukee Police Department and local officials have acknowledged the challenges they are working to address, and we urge them to engage and to enact higher standards and more direct accountability. We all want to be able to trust each and every officer serving to protect us. Incidents like this remind us of the injustices that persist. As an organization, we will support Sterling and build our work with local leaders and organizations to foster safe neighborhoods and better our community.
Yeah, contrast that to the NFL's decision this week, because we all remember the reason why those players were taking a knee was because of exactly this kind of stuff.
Yes. And there are some football owners who have come out against this and say they will pay their players fines straight out of their own pockets if they continue to take a knee because of what's happening in this country.
That's what should happen.
Philadelphia Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie hasn't come out. I don't think he said anything publicly about this, but he is probably one of those owners that is in the minority on this, and rightfully so. Last year you had Chris Long, you had Malcolm Jenkins up here in the Capitol, pushing for their community reforms. Now, some people think that they caved with this, with what they caved to, but you have people who are pretty much having a woke experience on these football teams, and this is bringing these teams together. And the stuff that Jenkins and the stuff that Chris Long have done probably brought that Eagles locker room together throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree. And,
with social justice.
Well, and this is exactly what it's gonna take in part too, as well as some of these players to kind of not just take the knee, but also then start getting actively involved in their communities.
And you know what? I'm glad the owners did this. I'm glad. I think it's a good thing that the owners did this. You know why? Because it shows you which owners are the racists in the league. It put them on record that they will stand with the oppressor and not the oppressed, and that will even legitimize their downfall even quicker.
I hear you, man. I'm with you. All right, well, this does it for segment 1, right? So this is a good place to end on that, because I think we got just enough rage built up that we need to take a little break. Otherwise, we're going to go into a bunch of tirades, right? So, which I'm known for. All right, just want to remind everybody, if you want to become a member of Raging Chicken Press to support progressive media, movement media, the ones that we are there to support the movement and to expand what we do, you need to become a member of Raging Chicken Press by going to patreon.com/rcpress. Become a member for as little as $5 a month. It is your membership which keeps us going. We'll be back right after this short break with more.
Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day Operation Humanity marched in support of New York City hospital workers fighting for union recognition and bargaining rights at area voluntary hospitals. Workers organizing with Local 1199 had been on strike since May 8th and called on the public to support them in their efforts. They pointed out that the 30,000 overwhelmingly black and Latino workers were fighting against economic exploitation and discrimination. Striking workers condemned their paltry wages, which averaged $21 less a week than workers at city hospitals. They added they had no job security or benefits and were not even eligible for unemployment. The Central Labor Council, the NAACP, and area civil rights activists all supported the march. In their book, Upheaval in the Quiet Zone, Leon Fink and Brian Greenberg note that a union largely led by Jews had squared off against hospitals directed by the scions of the city's Jewish community, to the degree that it was a family affair. The 1959 fight thus took on the bitterness of a civil war. As well, Catholic trade union leaders decried the anti-union fervor of hospitals run by the Archdiocese. Fink and Greenberg illustrate the support of fiery Mike Quill, president of TWU Local 100, who denounced hospital trustees as worse than famed segregationist Governor Orville Faubus of Arkansas. Weeks into the strike, area trade unions supplied reinforcements in the form of donations, loans, and groceries. Local IBEW members assessed themselves $1 a week for the strikers. Many unions regularly joined picket lines in support. Though the strike would fail to secure union recognition and collective bargaining rights, there were minimal gains. Solidarity galvanized the membership for future battles. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to Raging Chickens Out the Coop podcast. Sean, so out there in Harrisburg today, in our little PA segment, out there in Harrisburg today, looks like, Scarnati seems to be, I don't know, he wants to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, he came out in support of open primaries this past weekend. And, there was no legislative policy put forward. He just put out some big, vague ideas. Monday at the Pennsylvania Press Club lunch, which is a fourth Monday of every month. The Press Club puts a lunch on over at the Hilton Hotel. In one of the conference rooms, they have a speaker there, usually like one of the legislative leaders or someone running for office, or say like one of the row officers to speak about some of the things that they're doing. And it's a nice little area to gather, lobbyists from all sides of the issues, union officials, people from the right, people from the left, get together and listen to this official speak. I think it's actually it's a pretty cool thing to go to, because you get to see a little bit of a different side of some of the people that you see on a day-to-day basis. And Senator Scarnati, who likes to ruffle the feathers a little bit, came out in support of the open primary, and I think this is obviously in bad faith. We were talking about this before the show.
Yeah.
He has a couple of quotes in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. One of them he says the extremes of the parties have taken over the primary process. Mr. Scarnati said, pointing to the upset of a Republican state senator in Western Pennsylvania by a conservative insurgent, and also the defeat of two veteran Democratic state representatives in the region at the hands of the Democratic Socialists of America. And he goes on to say, and by far, I'm not a moderate and I'm not a liberal. I'm a conservative, but I don't know that I fit the new brand of conservatives. And I'm not so sure that some of the Democrats in the Senate Democrats fit the brand of the new liberals. Yes. And he wants to it seems like he wants to open the primaries as a way of preserving the establishment and preserving the status quo.
Yeah, see, I'm there's something fishy with what's going on here.
And what he said exactly is a symptom of extreme gerrymandering that he and his chief of staff, straight Ella Drew Crompton, decided to, die on that hill over the past year in court, defending the shitty maps that he made. And in my opinion, what he is describing at this luncheon is the direct result of the gerrymandered maps that they came up with in 2012 that created a bunch of 60-40, 60-40, 65-35, 70-30 districts that preserves the incumbency and also allows people to flank the Democrats or Republicans from the left or from the right in the primary process. And that if you have more moderate districts, like a 50-50, 55-45, you're going to have more moderate people in office, and you'll be able to actually talk to people, and you won't have a polarized chamber. That's my opinion on this.
Yeah. So here, this is where it's just the something fishy stuff.
He is directly responsible for this.
Yes.
For drawing a 34, like a 67% supermajority in the Senate that allowed people like Scott Wagner to get in office, allowed people like Camara Bartolota to get in office, allow some of your extremely whack job conservatives like Mike Regan to get in office. This is the direct result of the symptoms that he's describing. This has nothing to do with opening up the primary process. This is all about the gerrymandered maps that he and his staff came up with in 2012 and that they pushed through.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Like, this is a perfect example. This kind of touches on something we discussed in the first segment, right? About having to really think about, like, real politics, not kind of just ideological ones or not just ideas, right? Because one of the things that, and again, why I'm so, like, really being really cautious about this is because
it's in bad faith.
Well, that's the thing, because we saw that a lot of people were saying that, look, the primary process being dominated by the two parties, right, is actually restrictive. It leaves a lot of people out. Why wouldn't we want to encourage more participation? This was an argument that came from, say, the Bernie Sanders side of folks, right? This has been an argument that's been around for a while about as a way of including more people in the political process. If you're going to have a two-party system that is going to dominate the way that elections rule, right, well, then they're going to need to open up. We should be demanding that they open up their process to deciding those candidates to a broader one. Now, again, this goes back and forth. But let me just give an example. I just came up. This came out today. Okay, Dan Spiegel, who's was the PR guy for the Kutztown University's ABSCUF, right, the union guy, who I worked with closely for a while. He just had this published in the Morning Call, and this is. Let me just read you a little bit about what he says here. He says, quote, "The two major political parties have long held a stranglehold over the electoral system of Pennsylvania. Until February, the requirements for an independent candidate to appear on the ballot were so much more stringent than for those candidates of the two major parties that they effectively precluded independent candidates in the Commonwealth. Independent candidates still face hurdles that exceed those candidates from the major parties, and the state remains an inhospitable place for independent candidates and voters. And there's a tone deafness, or maybe more to the point, a feigned ignorance of the idea that political candidates should not have to have an R or a D by their name to have a fair chance to compete for votes, and that voters need not be loyal to a particular party to elect the best people in office." Okay, and then he gives this example. On April 18th, major party hegemony was reinforced when HB 638 passed the State House with about 60% support. The proposed legislation would end the practice of permitting candidates for school boards to file to appear on the primary ballots of both Democratic and Republican parties. Okay, so
cross-filing.
What's that?
They're going to have to cross-filing.
Right. Well, but this was just kind of like one example he was using about
which is what Costa tried to do. Right.
Exactly, and how this is playing itself out in these primaries. Now, or here. So what's interesting about this is Dan. I'm not going to speak for Dan, but I pretty much know the guy fairly well. He's not going to line up with Scarnati on this. Right, just on most political things, he's not going to line up on this. So, and the argument that Dan Spiegel is making in that piece in the Morning Call, my guess is very different when it comes to the policy than the stuff that Scarnati is saying. But because like you said, Scarnati offered no specifics here.
There's no legislation. There's no policy.
Right. So
and there's no way in saying how.
Right. So my point here is that for those folks who are progressive and coming from the left, who have been arguing for open primaries, right, do not see this as an opportunity to work across party lines in order to get things done. We need. My thought is like, well, why not, to force this guy's hand? Why not propose the most progressive, like, open primary bill out there? Right, kind of like you were talking about this before we went on today too, as well, like the California system, right?
I think the California system is amazing.
Right, top two vote getters, doesn't matter our party. Top two vote getters are the ones that go before the general election, right? So it could be two Democrats, it could be a Democrat and a socialist, right? It could be two socialists for that matter, right? Or it could be two Republicans, right? That's the way that's. So why not say, oh, why don't we argue for something like that? That would be kind of interesting, just to try to force this guy's hand. Because I think you're absolutely right. Scarnati is trying to find a backdoor way of kind of re-engineering the kind of gerrymandering that just got stripped away from his paws.
Yeah, and that's how I looked at it as soon as I saw this. This is him looking for another cause to the symptoms, or looking for to diagnose the symptoms, looking for another disease to diagnose it, when really it's the gerrymandered maps that he and his staff and House Republican leadership decided to push through back in 2012 that would create these districts And, if you have a 65-35 district, it doesn't give you the incentive to be a centrist candidate or more moderate on your views.
Exactly. This has to be only about power. Did you see Jeff Flake's thing this week?
No.
Right. Well, Jeff Flake basically gave this. It was a Harvard, maybe a Harvard Law School almost. He gave this basically scathing speech about Donald Trump, right? And Rachel Maddow actually, for once, pointed this out. Right, was exactly this, is that he said, it should be remarked that even though he's got this scathing critique, he basically voted for every single thing that Trump has kind of put forward. So this is more about something else.
And just like Charlie Dent, vote for Trump 95% of the times, gets hired to go on CNN to speak how shitty of a president Donald Trump is.
Exactly. And so what Scarnati and these folks seem to be objecting to has more to do with, he doesn't like the tone of things. He would prefer the things would be different. Because Scarnati, even in the piece that you read, he says, I'm a conservative. This is not about kind of wanting to kind of move things in for the extremes. It's about wanting to maintain a power hold on their party. Because Scarnati has been one of the people who have basically created the scenario that we're in.
And basically what we said last week, the Democrats were upset that the DSA people are getting on the ballot because they're playing by their rules and they are winning.
Exactly.
So now this is them wanting to rewrite the rules so the DSA members don't get in office.
Right, exactly. And my guess is that behind the scenes that there are some people in the the Pennsylvania Democratic Party who are so pissed off by that, they're probably having these kind of backdoor meetings with Scarnati, right? Kind of talking about how mad they are about the way things are. And,
Or this way, he's just fucking with them.
Well, yeah, totally. But, they're sitting there doing that. Anyways.
But
yeah.
I guess we're going to talk about Democratic Socialists. Throw that in there real quick.
Oh yeah, we should do that right. Well, I should say, okay, we'll talk about that right now. So, so the PA Democrats are a little shaky these days, Sean.
Yeah, I was talking to someone who is close to the caucus and saying they're all walking around with their heads chopped off like chickens running around without a body. They are shook.
The DSA is coming. The DSA is coming. The DSA is coming. The sky is falling.
They didn't see it coming. And you know what I told the person?
Do tell.
I was like, if they would have listened to me back in February, I would have told them back then all three of them were going to win. I told the people at HDCC that all three of these candidates were going to win. And you know what? They all looked at me like I had 4 fucking heads on my shoulder. And guess what? They all won.
They all won, exactly. And so you know what? We should just get little business cards made up that says, listen to the podcast, stupid. It's like... No, they didn't. It shows you how safe they felt for so long.
And they won with, unions backing the fucking moderate candidates like Dom Costa and shit like that, too.
Yeah, and we should say, well, again, I was looking at some of the details, and it wasn't all the unions, too, as well. I have to say, United Electrical Workers came out strong for Sarah Innamorato.
And a lot of rank-and-file workers came out strong for these candidates.
Exactly.
Which it shows you where social justice unionism is at, and also how now that's starting to interweave with party politics.
Yeah, that's right. And look, we talked about this last week too as well. My union backed the Costas, right? And when I was kind of when I posted to Facebook that I was gravely disappointed in my union for backing them, right? Especially when Summerlee and Sarah Innamorato were, I didn't expect them for a second to back them too. They would have played the more we're just going to stay out of the primary thing. But I was told members are free to do what to vote everywhere they want. I'm like, that goes without saying, right? It's not that's like a statement. That's a non-statement. Members can vote. Of course, members could do whatever they want. Right? That's not even the point. The point is what is it that the unions stand for, and where are they putting their emphasis behind? Right?
And here's something else. Might get your blood spinning.
Oh,
I heard.
Great. Here we go.
Wave of labor endorsements are going to be coming out next couple weeks.
Good.
For the generals.
Yeah.
And
don't say what I'm thinking right now. Just go ahead. If you say what I'm thinking now, I'm going to be really mad. But
there's going to be some people in the labor movement that want to heavily support Martina White.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
In Northeast Philadelphia. And I ripped into a labor lobbyist. I'm saying, so your people would rather support a fucking racist over having someone, a progressive in that seat.
But remind everyone of that race.
Mike Doyle is running around unopposed up there in Northeast Philadelphia. one of the candidates. I know personally, we go back and forth. And Martina White is a Republican up there who has gone after immigrants and who has tried to go after immigrant families and who has stood behind the police and Blue Lives Matter and everything like that. She basically thinks that police should have should be able to tase someone like Sterling Brown, or should be able to shoot Sterling Brown without any justice towards the victims of those families. And it will be extremely disappointing if some of these labor unions come out in support of someone who's an outright racist in 2018, who we know is like that, when the politics has changed dramatically on the left.
Look, I'll say this right now. I don't care who this pisses off. Right. The thing is that if you are a labor leader and if you come out in support of Martina Wright, you don't belong in the labor movement. And like members of that union, right? It's like if you're one,
and it's going to be the building. We know some of the building trades are going to be supporting her because that's who usually does, and the FOP. But it will be interesting to see who else will come out in support of her.
That'll be freaking nuts, man. It's like when are those coming out? You think next couple of weeks? You said.
Yeah, next few weeks. It will be interesting to see.
I'm telling you, if that I'm just gonna I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait to see what happens, and then if need be, we'll go whole hog on that one, and we'll do a full call out, right, of who these leaders are and things like this. Because look, I mean, anybody in the labor movement thinks that kind of keeping things as they are, or whatever. As Brett Banditelli, right, our friend Brett Banditelli. When he tweeted back to me, like in response to the PA primary elections and with the DSA wins and things like this, and particularly about Costa's anti-immigrant stuff out there in Pittsburgh, and Banditelli, he's like, I don't know what else you need to say. It's like the fact that how do people not see that immigrant labor is labor, right? So that when you're coming out against immigrants, you're coming out against a huge sector of the workforce. Right, and so
huge sector of people who are joining those more CIO unions. Predominant industrialist unions like SEIU,
exactly,
that are who are who are driving force of the labor movement are single Latino mothers,
right. And if those of you who are kind of all nostalgic for the days that the labor movement was all white, right, see ya, because you're going out, right? It's not going to last. But so there you go. So the Democrats are all kind of like nervous about the DSA wins out there in Pittsburgh, and they're getting a little flustered. They're running around like Chicken Little, right? The sky is falling, the dome's coming in. Exactly. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Right? They're all sitting there. They're kind of watching reruns of like Red Dawn. Wolverines. They're crazy. Insane. And then I love the first day when like Sarah Innamorato and Summer Lee kind of show up with their like big like smiles and like awesome personalities and be like, like there's your face of socialism. You can tell me this is what you're afraid of.
In the Capitol.
Oh my God, that's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be awesome. So well, I guess today I should have mentioned right at the top of the segment is that today is Per Diem Day, isn't it, Sean?
Yes, it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I'll explain this real quick. On Monday, all the Republicans out in Western Pennsylvania had a golf fundraiser for Mike Turzai. So that's the reason why the House wasn't in session.
Oh, that was important.
Yes. So the Senate left yesterday because they were here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They got their shit done and left. And so the House decided to add a session day today on Thursday.
Well, that's good. They're hardworking.
Yes, they are. And I was talking to someone, and basically that their caucus is so much in shambles, they couldn't agree on the bills that they want to vote on today. So they're probably just going to gavel in, vote on a couple bills, much fewer bills than anticipated, and they expected to, and then get out of town.
And cashing in the taxpayers' dime along the way.
On the per diems, yes.
Get your per diem. Everybody per diem here. Get your per diem here. Come on in. Vote on this bullshit bill and get your per diem here. And they probably got a nice little rendezvous at the golf course and afterwards, so that they can laugh and laugh and laugh.
Well, it is like 70 degrees out today. It's going up to like mid-80s.
Yep. But
there's zero humidity and there's a nice light breeze. So.
Oh, there you have it. There you have it. So, Sean, I wanted you to kind of just talk a little bit about what just happened this week too, as well, with the pipeline protest criminalization bill that's gone through.
Yes, Senate Bill 652. Senate Bill 652 has been passed. We reported on this last year. This is a bill that would criminalize pipeline demonstrations. If they impede the process of a construction site, they would be charged with a felony crime that could bring up to 2 years in prison and, thousands of dollars of fines. It passed this week. And also one of the provisions added to it, if you're one of the people organizing this and you did not participate in the unlawful actions of arrest, civil disobedience, you will also be charged with conspiring in this crime. 2 Democrats voted for it. Senator Piscola out of Reading area, which no surprise there. And then Senator Utachek, who is the Senate Democrat, the ranking Democrat on the Energy and Environmental Resources Committee in the Senate. He, I heard, was pressured into voting for it because some of the more probably the building trade unions involved with these pipelines. I don't know who exactly, but they wanted him to vote for this because jobs, they're going to go away in a few months.
Yeah, and meanwhile, leave behind a path of destruction for the communities in which these pipelines are built, right? And kind of send us down kind of a climate hole that we're not going to be able to climb out of, right?
But hey, there will be no jobs after the planet's gone.
Oh, there'll be lots of jobs building air conditioning units, which will further pollute the climate, will send us down to a cascading effect to destroy us even further, which will require to build walls to keep out the water that is rising across the planet, right?
Or to keep out the people who can't afford the air conditioning units. To keep them out of the gated communities.
Build the gated communities, a construction boom. I see how it works.
Yeah. At least they're going to be prevailing wage jobs, probably.
Yeah. Well, good. We have a different set of voices that were in the Capitol this week that to push back into that kind of short-term thinking. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
This bill is not expected to pass the House. They have no intention on bringing this up for the rest of the session. When they get back into office on June 4th, they're pretty much going to be focused on the budget. They don't want to be running anything too controversial. And then afterwards, after the budget is passed, they all want to focus on their elections and pretty much be quiet for the rest of the year.
Do you expect that we're going to have a kind of a non-controversial budget season in some ways because of the elections?
I would think so, but
who knows, right? The shit show is always around the corner.
Yeah, this is Harrisburg. As I said, you got to be a little bit crazy to move out here.
Yeah. There you go. But like I was saying, you had some counter voices in the Capitol this week.
Yes, the Poor People's Campaign came back for a second week of action. 27 or 29 people were arrested. 2 of them were arrested. So basically, they had the rally. This is for immigrant justice and going against racial biases within our justice system, and also within the biases against poor people within our justice system. Afterwards, 27 people were arrested peacefully within the religious community, but also 2 women who were not expected to get arrested got arrested because as the banner hit the floor as the last person was arrested, 2 of these people went for it. There was a tug of war between the cops, and 2 of them got arrested. And it just shows you how out of hand these things can get real quickly, even when protesters are willfully getting arrested and putting their hands behind their backs for the cops in a situation like that.
Yeah, you know what?
I mean, this was a situation that had the organizers upset because they should not have gone through those actions. They believe with the people there because they didn't go to the trainings, they weren't there to get arrested, and they could have got lost inside the system. Fortunately, that did not happen. But also, that's just a situation where you have these cops. It's just an example of how fast cops can accelerate a situation from 0 to 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. It's like, it was interesting when, if people haven't seen Sean's videos of this, he captured this right on video. Just go to our Facebook page and check out his videos because it shows you exactly what he's talking about, how quickly this moves. And I was reminded when I was kind of reviewing that this yesterday. Sarah Kendzior was on the Rick Smith show this past week, and she was talking. They were talking in part about what's happening in Palestine, right? And kind of what are some of the effects that you see this happening in Palestine in terms of, and then how that is connected up to what you see with Trump talking about, the gangs as animals and things like that, and how
that's connected to our law enforcement agencies. A lot of our law enforcement officials travel to Israel to get training.
That's right.
From these extremely authoritarian, these ideologues, these Zionist officials over there.
Exactly. And what she was making a case for is like, so you've got these tactics, right, which are, again, integrated, right? They're more and more global tactics. Like you said, there's a direct line here, right, in terms of training. And we see that more and more. And part of what's happening is the media response and how the media covers this stuff, right? And what the narrative is about that helps set the ground and pave the way for more authoritarianism, because we start to basically say, oh, he's just talking about these gang members that are animals, right? He's not talking about all immigrants. But the practice is, we know there is no distinction between how ICE agents are dealing with known gang members and how they're dealing with the immigrant community. I mean, we saw this in Philadelphia this past week, right? 49 kind of immigrants arrested. We see this kind of like we see this happening across the country, where there was an incident of another immigrant being shot and killed. There was another kind of example of kind of more people being kids being ripped away from their families. I mean, this is, as Sam Cedar says,
the ACLU just published a report of abuses with immigrant children within these detention centers.
There you go. I mean,
we have a detention center of our own right in Berks County that these activists have been trying to shut down, and there
you go. I mean, this is exactly it. I mean, this is, as Sam Cedar has said, the ICE is a terrorist organization. Again, check that out. So listen, I mean, check out Sarah Kendzior. If I remember, I'll put a link in here. Sarah Kendzior on Rick Smith's show last week. Check out actually a recent episode of Chapo Trap House was dealing with this. Talking about an instance of a guy who's a comedian, where we talked about this in the show last week. The Homeland Security shows up at his door after he kind of made some jokes about ICE agents, this is what the future is being paved for us, and we got to stop those roads, because those roads do not lead to good places. But crazy, man. I'm glad you got those picks out there, because I'll tell you, the Poor People's Campaign, I mean, what they're doing, revitalizing Martin Luther King's approach to this kind of like bottom up, we're going to lift all boats, and we're going to do it through direct action and civil disobedience, is I think where we need to be.
Yes, and this is being run by Reverend Barber out of North Carolina, who had the Moral Monday movements a couple years ago.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. So two quick things then. One is that PASHE, State System of Higher Education in Pennsylvania, just got themselves a new chancellor, right? He's Daniel Greenstein. Greenstein. Daniel Greenstein. He's the former director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Post-Secondary Success Program. And he was just chosen. And guess what, Sean?
What?
Oh, he's a doctor.
He's a doctor. That's right.
Oh, he's a doctor.
That's right. And people are stumbling over themselves in the PR blitz in terms of looking at Mr. McDreamy, Dr. McDreamy.
The PR blitz is almost like a shock doctrine approach.
It is. You got Dr. McDreamy out there. He's got all the hair and he's got the credentials. He's fit. He comes out of Silicon Valley where all the hipsters are and all the kind of progressive blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. It's been
not progressives, all the technocrats. The
technocrats, thank you. Right, yes. We're there, but the important thing is,
oh, he's a doctor.
Right, and that's exactly it. And let me just here's the issue for me. Right, number one, what has virtually just gone away, right, is the fact that if people recall, the last time that there was a chancellorship that got us Frank Brogan, right, who's now the assistant director of Secretary of Education. What's that?
Working under DeVos.
Yeah, works under Betsy DeVos, right? And that's kind of like his career path, right? He just wanted to bust the union, didn't do it, so he got out. Now he's working for Trump, right? So that's what our last process got. And that was put in place by Guido Pacchini, who insisted that people who were on that hiring committee signed confidentiality agreements because their claim was that that's going to get us better candidates. Now, let's put aside the actual research that shows that that's not really the case. Right, that's not really how it works. Right, they just wanted to kind of like close things. So there was not going to be any kind of scrutiny of these candidates from the public, right, from media, from the journalists, from faculty members, from students, anybody who might be impacted by these decisions. So they closed it off, and they kept that in place with the new chair of the Board of Governors. They kept that process in place. It was a secretive process, so we have no idea who the other candidates were. Right? And we had no way of weighing in on the kinds of questions that should have been asked. And then there was a big kind of to-do. So, oh, God, here comes the announcement. Here comes the announcement. It's Dr. McDreamy. He's our guy. Right? So Daniel Greenstein, he's kind of come out, and now he's the candidate. And it was across the board kind of like fawning over this guy from the Board of Governors, from my union, ABSCUF, to the governor's office, right across the board about how great this guy is. And if you actually put his name in and got to do the searches, the media searches on him right now, it's basically you're taking all the newspapers, right, have run basically the campaign package. I mean, the PR package that was released with this guy. What's that?
Verbatim.
I'm practically verbatim, right? There's been no kind of deep reporting on this guy or what it is. Now, again, let me be absolutely 100% clear. This guy might work out, right? I don't know enough yet, right, to say this. What I do know is that I know the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have been all about, got behind all the charter school movements. I do know that they've been active in this kind of private education enterprise.
They were part of ALEC.
I do know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also were all big about kind of putting everything online. Right?
And the STEM movement.
Right.
That Chapo Trap House talks about all the time.
Right, exactly.
We just give everyone STEM degrees. Yeah. And the STEM degrees are going to be worthless.
STEM degrees, everybody gets STEM degrees, right? So let's drive down the cost of labor for Silicon Valley, right? Yay! So, look, I know enough about the foundation and some of its work in education, right? It's done some good charitable work. There's no doubt about that. I'm not knocking that stuff. The early indications are that this Daniel Greenstein has actually participated in some kind of charitable giving stuff here. But the question is like, what questions were asked of this guy, right? When I see the PR blitz and I see people say, well, he's worked to advance the kind of like, want to make sure that it's more accessible to more people and ensure accessibility of higher education. What the hell does that mean? What are the specifics? Right? What kind of policies in particular? How has he worked with faculty unions before? Right? How does he propose to deal with the fact that, because you see this in all the news reports, that Pennsylvania is dealing with this crisis and a defunding problem and a decline of enrollment. And so what's it going to do? So we're going to need innovative solutions. Right? The easiest solution is not innovative at all. It's fund frickin' higher education. Period. So what has he done in the past? What does it mean to innovate? Right? Are we going to see more kind of push towards online stuff? He's actually, in some of the statements that he's come out, he's praised some of these reports that came out that talked about the need for transformation in higher education, right? To need to do some things which are really sketchy. So I have no idea how he comes down on faculty unions in practice. Not in terms of his nice little talking points that he can give to a committee to get a job. I'm talking about what he's actually done in practice, right? And what are the assurances that anybody has at this point that this guy is going to lead us in a positive direction? Because frankly, I'm not going to take anybody's word for it. I'm not, right? And I don't think anybody should. If we should know this enough has happened, enough like water is under the bridge by now that we got to ask critical questions and withhold our judgment until we've got the practical stuff. Don't buy the blitz. Don't buy the PR blitz until we know for sure, right? I urge caution. So in the next few weeks, good time it's summertime because now I get to do some of my research again. So we'll be digging in to find a little bit about what are some of the specific policies and backgrounds about this guy. What is it that's been so kind of encouraging about this guy? And again, if we find out that there's a lot to be positive about, we'll talk about that, and that'll be a good thing, right? And that's important, right? But we'll see. We'll see. We're going to withhold judgment for now on where this ends up. Last thing I want to say for this section is this is kind of a big week for the Colleen Bradley case. Colleen Bradley, her writ of certiorari for the U.S. Supreme Court to get her case heard before the Supreme Court is due, I believe, by the end of the month, if I got that right. I've got some writing that I'm going to be doing on this because I want you to pay attention to some of what's happening. Because if you look at what's happened, the recent Supreme Court ruling that we talked about in our first segment today, the Colleen Bradley case, not only are we going to have what just happened in the Supreme Court, our ability for class action lawsuits to be stripped away from us as workers, right? That goes away, right? What you find in the Colleen Bradley case, once again, if this is your first time tuning in, is the kind of like the narrowing of protections for whistleblowers and First Amendment speech at work, right? So you put those two things together, and that is not a good scenario. So again, you're talking about a potential narrowing. This is going to impact over 30 million public sector workers, and that case will be going forward. Look forward to my reporting on this in our Raging Chicken Press and the pages coming soon. All right. Anything else for the good of the order on Pennsylvania, Sean?
No, I believe that's it.
All right. So when we come right back, we're going to be back with our last call. I want to remind everybody to become a member of Raging Chicken Press, support movement media, progressive media, homegrown, right here in Pennsylvania. Support Raging Chicken Press by going to patreon.com/rcpress and become a member for as little $5 a month. We'll be back with last call. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Over the past 6 years, we've brought unapologetic, progressive, activist media to Pennsylvania and beyond. We've helped hold those in power accountable and shine a light on some amazing activist work. We've broken national stories and established a reputation as an aggressive, independent media site. As newsrooms close and traditional journalists lose their jobs, hard-hitting investigative news suffers. If we care about our democracy, we have to find new sustainable models of journalism. And frankly, no one's going to do it for us. After the Trump election, we dug in even deeper. Thanks to some longtime members, one-time donations, and a shift in other resources, we brought on more writers and started paying them. Now we're doubling down and want to expand our infrastructure and pay our writers even more. We need to invest in our media if we have a chance to resist the unprecedented assault on democracy, working families, women's rights, and our planet. History will remember the choices we make today. So take a minute to become a member of Raging Chicken Press. For as little as $5 a month, the price of a local craft beer or a cup of coffee, you will be supporting homegrown progressive journalists and media activists. Go to RagingChickenPress.org and click on the Support and Membership tab to become a member. Leave a one-time donation or learn about other ways that you can help. We don't have billionaire backers. Keeping progressive, activist media going strong depends on you. Thank you for all your help and support. Keep up the fight. Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop podcast. This is the last call. And Sean, again, big news this week, and I know that you were really bummed out about this, but the Sci-Fi Channel canceled The Expanse. I'm sorry.
What's that? I don't have a TV up. I don't have a TV in my apartment, so I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
You can watch it online. I thought you watched it. That you're a huge fan of the show. Now, for those of you who are like Sean and have no idea what The Expanse is, The Expanse was it's a sci-fi series. It's based on a series of novels by James S.A. Corey. James S.A. Corey is actually the writing name of a team of writers. We're going to get real quick. Sorry, a team of writers: Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. And it was a series. I think it was 6 books, maybe 7 books, and it was this kind of like space opera kind of stuff. And it's gotten phenomenal reviews. The second series, I don't know if it's the last episode was this past Wednesday, but it's like I read all the books and I've been watching the show. And the first series was kind of hokey, a little bit sci-fi television stuff. Second season's been getting really good. So just when it starts to get good, Sci-Fi decides to kind of cancel that. But the good news, so it started basically shopping the show around, and it looks like that Amazon actually may play hero on this one and pick it up. So we might kind of see this migrate to Amazon from the Sci-Fi Channel. But it's a cool series. It's kind of like, again, this set in the kind of future where all the kind of outer planets, stuff like this, are colonized, and some of the moons and stuff, and has a lot to deal with kind of power and corporate control and the kind of issues that we see in our culture today. So just had to throw that in there because I know Sean was so upset this week. No, seriously, right before we went to this segment, I said, no, let's start with the Expanse stuff. And Sean's like, what's the Expanse? I'm like, that's why we're starting with it. I have no idea. But seriously, so that's all I got in space news this week. But Sean, you kind of were kind of back and forth with this a little bit this week about this article that came out about the craft beer industry.
Yes. So this is there's a blog out there called Splinter. Mm-hmm. It's one of the newer blogs. It's part of the I guess that old Gawker family of blogs. Uh-huh. Lifehacker, Jezebel, Gizmodo, Jollo Pink, The Takeout, The Root are all under Deadspin, the AV Club. Sort of like all these really good blogs I enjoy reading, clickbaity, but like informative stories and funny stories, and also serious stories. Splinter had an article out that this came out last Friday, and I didn't remember about it until until I didn't put it into the show notes until this morning. It's called "Craft Beer's Moral High Ground Doesn't Apply to Its Workers."
About right.
Yes, small business tyranny exists within the craft beer scene. And I encourage everyone to read that. Earlier in the podcast, I shared some of my stories. And, some of the things I personally had to deal with, it talks about OSHA violations. Or OSHA visits, which is next to nothing. We have no enforcement safety workplace mechanism in this country anymore because of how Republicans have just gutted this program over the decades. Some of the things, like people are being underpaid. And it's not just the, Pizza Boy, it's Trogs doing the same thing with some of their bartenders there and some of their wait staff. It's happening at these bigger breweries that people think is such progressive beacons on this hill, when it's just a facade.
Well, I remember. I can remember when I first went to some actual craft breweries, and just kind of strike, especially early on, right? And I can understand some of this. If you're just kind of you've got friends and you're trying to put it together and stuff like this. But I remember this early on, going to some kind of startup craft breweries and things that were just established, and talking to the bartenders at the time, and they're saying like, I said, "Oh, so man, this is a pretty good job." And they said to me, and this woman who was serving me this one time, I'll never forget it. She said to me, "Oh no, we don't get paid. We volunteer, so we just get tips." Because that's what it was. There was a tip chart. It says we don't get paid. We work for tips. And I was like, "What? How is that even legal?" Right? To do this, and I think that there's a tendency not to want to look at these things too closely because of just like you said, the veneer of progressivism. This is kind of cool and hip. But unless we're talking about, how the workers are being treated, then there's a problem. This
goes back to service workers being the modern day factory workers from the 19-teens and 1920s.
Yep.
This is this goes right to the heart of that. Talking about backbreaking work. Some of the things we had to do, we would have to unstack kegs in the keg cooler, full half kegs that are stacked 3 high, and bring them down to the ground and roll them into the restaurant. Mm-hmm. To change a keg that is stacked, you have the one keg, you have a keg holder, and you have another keg on top. A keg weighs 160 pounds. Yep. A full half keg is 160 pounds. I could lift these up pretty easily. It's not that hard for me to do that, but it is extremely unsafe and extremely risky. People are always tearing up their backs because of not lifting these kegs properly, trying to muscle them up there, struggling to put them up there. The cramped spaces in the keg cooler and stuff like that. Then outside we had the keg cage, which is these empty kegs that were stacked 3 or 4 high. and we would have to stack these kegs in at the end of the night. And it's the type of thing where people didn't know how to stack kegs, didn't know how to stack a keg properly. Instead of like staggering them, you would have idiots stacking these kegs straight up in the air, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, and creating an unstable thing. There were plenty of times, or a couple of times in my experience, where I had kegs that were stacked 3 or 4 high fall out of the keg cage into the parking lot because they weren't stacked properly. There's stuff like that. And earlier in the wage theft issues that we had. This is, I don't want to get into too much. I don't want to open up too much about it. But for someone who's worked in this industry for a while, it definitely leaves you jaded after a while and makes you want to get the hell out.
Yeah, and I think, it's a shame. What we saw...
And I'm pretty sure you could probably tell I was on the verge of getting out and got hired doing a job out here in Harrisburg, doing a couple of other things that will have me working full-time through the end of the year, hopefully. And this will, this is something that people should read.
Well, and I think there's a great opportunity for kind of especially craft beer enthusiasts to kind of get behind the workers on this one, right? And guys, because look, a lot of craft breweries. I mean, one of the things, again, this is absolute truth. A lot of craft breweries have actually brought kind of jobs and industry to kind of smaller towns or kind of like around the country, right? Certainly throughout Pennsylvania. They've actually kind of, created this kind of sense of community and have been very active in their communities. Well, then we got to kind of take that step further. So if that's true, what's the quality of the people that are working there? And I think back to, and I'm forgetting which brewery it was, Sean, out in California, who went to a workers' co-op model. Do you remember what? I think
Modern Times.
Yeah, Modern Times. Right. So, in my mind,
a bunch of other ones have done this too.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of like a trend. So if you're kind of if you want to hold, we could say, yes, we love the beer, right? Especially the kind of great beers. Well, actually, we want to make this the best possible community institution, around, right? So then maybe we start talking about kind of like saying, what kind of, organization model does this craft brewery have? How do we make it actually kind of a stalwart of the community? Maybe it should be the kind of thing that as a brewery grows, right, it should start thinking about this kind of, worker cooperative model where actually workers are kind of part of that and actually kind of become part of the decision-making process and actually get paid fair wages, have medical insurance, have all the kinds of things that we need. Right. And again, is it going to take a unionization effort? Right. Probably. But, it'd be great to see this kind of pressure. So, I mean, check out this article in Splinter because I think it's important for us to be really looking at
also,
this.
like, big picture issues.
Yeah.
This changed my mind a lot on the minimum wage argument that we're having in this country. Mm-hmm. 10.10 is not enough.
No.
Plain and simple. $15 an hour is not enough as a living wage. Yep. $15 does not come close to a living wage. If we want to talk about a living wage and a minimum wage, it should at least be set at $20 an hour at the minimum.
Yeah.
And working in a place like this, our owners, and people in the area could easily afford this.
That's right.
It doesn't take. I think Stevie Wonder could probably see the wealth coming from some of the people, the owners in this industry, and $20 an hour should be the bare set for a minimum wage.
Right.
Because this is small business tyranny. There are owners who can absolutely afford paying their workers that wage, but they choose not to and choose to have unsafe work conditions, choose to pay their brewers $8 or $9 an hour working 50 hours a week.
That's
just to want to get into the business. Like if I wanted to get into the brewing process where I would have been a pay cut for me.
That's
with
unreal.
More labor.
That's unreal. That's unreal. This is a perfect. I mean, this is a perfect example of
why we need unions, why you need workplace protections, and why you need to demand a fair share of the economic pie.
Exactly, right from the get-go. Right, that labor always has to be part of the process. Right, it can't just be about hipness and coolness, folks. It has to be actually the actual living conditions of the people that are bringing you the beer. Whether it's the brewers, whether it's the support staff, whether it's the servers, right, right across the board.
And it's not just where I was working. This is an industry wide. This is an industry wide problem. There are a lot of people making a lot of money off of this, and the workers are getting fucked over.
Yep.
The Trogners, working at Trogs is one of the issues. Yeah.
So here it is. Here's a task for everybody out there listening to this, especially the last call segment, is that when you go into your local craft brewery, right, and you kind of talk to one of your servers or something like that, Ask them what their working conditions are like. Ask
And you know
them how
what?
much they get
You
paid.
can guarantee you could look at their faces and tell how shitty it is their job they're in, and that they're in a bad spot.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool doesn't pay the bills, folks. Cool doesn't pay the bills. Right? That's why hipsterism will never get us out of the hole that we're in. All right? How about that? Well, I got to say, I was in Chicago last weekend, which is why we had to go on a Wednesday last week for the show. And I was out there. My wife had to go out there for a conference, and so I went out there with her. And we went the first time we'd been anywhere without the kids, which was pretty remarkable. Got to see my friend Pegeen and her daughter Elizabeth out there. We missed Doug and Charlie, but we got to see Pegeen and Elizabeth, which was awesome. And got to sample some great beer. Got to see this awesome comedy show. If anybody that likes comedy, Second City is like, a Chicago institution, and they have Up Comedy Club as one of their comedy clubs. We went to go see a show called She the People. It was just this great, fun, critical, feminist review. It was the first ever all women's cast and production that Second City has ever done. So for those of you who want to say that, well, what happened to gender discrimination? The fact that here we are, like in 2018, and this is the first all-women show that Second City has ever done. That's something. This is the place that has, produced Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, all these folks, right? So that was awesome to get to see. That was good to see there. And while I was there, got to sample some great beer too as well in Chicago. Got to sample this kind of really good American IPA called Anti-Hero. It was kind of like a sessionable IPA. It was really, really good. That was awesome. Sean told me I had to have two Floyds while I was out there. And
Three Floyds.
I'm sorry, three Floyds, my bad. I always forget the third Floyd. Three Floyds while I was out there, which comes out of Indiana. We weren't really beer shopping while we were out there. We kind of went wherever, looked for places that we could go to kind of sample some cool beers. So I did have Yum Yum by Three Floyds, and that was good. Again, it was a light, sessionable pale ale. That was good too as well. But my favorite of the whole time was there's this brewery called Haymarket Brewing Company and Pub. We went to this restaurant. My friend Pegeen took us there. It was called Cindy's Rooftop Restaurant. This old building. It's a Chicago Athletic Association building, and now it's a hotel. They have a rooftop. It's like 10th floor, I think. A rooftop restaurant and bar and things like that. We didn't eat there. There was too much to eat there. But we got to hang out in front of like a fire pit on the 10th floor overlooking Millennial Park. And there had this Defender American Stout by Haymarket Brewing. And like, oh my God, that was fantastic. Roasted barley, chocolate malt, dark crystal malt with oats, and it was dry hopped with Cascade, Chinook, and Amarillo. It was phenomenal. And maybe it was just the 10th floor sightseeing kind of like thing talking, but that was a great beer. So shout out to that. I've always loved Chicago. It was great to kind of like look for.
See the Haymarket Memorial?
No, it didn't get there. We wanted to go, and then just with what things that we had to do while we were there, it just. I know.
I know. I'm calling out your class
I have been there
right
though.
now.
I didn't go this time. I've been there, so I know what to tell you. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, and we're trying to keep our eyes out for Rahm Emanuel over there to see if we could harass the guy on the street, but no luck there. That was a bummer. But what are you going to do? Cool. And so last in beer news for the week, Philly Beer Week kicks off on June 1st. So
nice.
Yeah,
I knew that was coming around the corner. I didn't know it was that close.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought it was a little bit further off, but there you have it, June 1st to the 10th. So cool. So any beer news on your end, Sean?
No, I am. Well, right after the recording of this podcast, I am going to be heading over to Evergreen, meeting up with a couple people from the local congressional campaign out here. And I'm looking to volunteer and help out in doing some social media and communications work with the congressional campaign out here in central Pennsylvania. George Scott's our candidate. He's a Presbyterian minister out of York County, and as he was saying, he says I have Scott Perry on the gods and guns. So he says I have Scott Perry on God, and I have Scott Perry on the Army. So this guy's a 20-year Army veteran. He's quiet, doesn't have too many positions, really like close to himself. He more of a moderate Democrat you're going to get out here. But one thing I would say to him, I've seen George Scott at most of the rallies over the past few weeks. He's been to two of the poor people's campaigns. He's been to a bunch of other demonstrations at the Capitol and in Harrisburg. And he's there by himself. He's not there with any staff. He's not there with his manager or his director. Sometimes he shows up with them, but most of the time he's there himself, standing in the crowd, watching and listening.
There you go.
And we had a really good conversation. I talked to him for about 15, 20 minutes when he was handing in his paperwork to get on the ballot, while me and Roxbury were, barnstorming and badgering and making fun of the candidates coming in and saying, "Oh, you're going to lose. No, you don't have a." Like one of the things, like we would do, like, "Oh, how many petitions do you hand in?" 1,200. Yep, you're off the ballot. Good luck. So, stuff like that. I've had friends in this primary process who worked for Shoviana Corbyn's campaign, who worked for Alan Howe's campaign and for George Scott's campaign out here, and looking forward to volunteer and hopefully fuck Scott Perry and we can win.
There you go, man. And I assume that you're just you're meeting up at Evergreen simply because it's just a convenient central location to meet up. Yes. There will be no day drinking involved whatsoever, right?
Maybe some light beer. I've been running the past few weeks.
Sean has been run shaming everyone on Twitter and Facebook. So like as I was saying, when I left previous Pizza Boy, there was sort of like this orgasm of emotions. I did like just binging and drinking, and I stepped on the scale and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta start doing something. My back was hurting. I have a bulging disc in my lower back that I pulled when I was in college. Has been fucking with me ever since, and if I do not stay active, my back and my legs are just a mess and in shambles. So, I went from not even being able to like bend over to stretching out. I had to sit down on the ground and stretch out my back and everything. Yeah. And doing yoga exercises before I went running, to now I could basically bend over and touch my ankles when I'm stretching. So I'm getting there. There you go, man.
And my back is feeling great.
That's awesome, man.
And with my back feeling great, I'm not smoking. I am not in a pissed off mood.
Yes, it's good. Well, I'll tell you, at the end, it was the end of my semester, and one of the things I knew, I had a bunch of stuff to just to get done. It was been a hectic couple of weeks, but I knew that when we got back from Chicago, I was going to start, kind of doing. So I think I've talked about this on the show before. I got hurt my knee kind of pretty badly. I was worried that I had an ACL tear. But I think it was just a really bad tendon pull. That's how I was treating it, at least. So it's been slowly kind of trying to build up strength on it. And it's at the point now where I've been going for these, kind of 4 or 5 mile walks every day this week. And it's not bothering me anymore. Instead of building the strength back up, which I was very thrilled about, because it was the same kind of stuff. It's like, it's one thing when you kind of, during
it's amazing you have a back injury, you're putting weight on because you can't do anything.
Well, that's the thing, is I had this is my second knee injury, right? So, I mean, that any kind of weight is like, it's like every pound, I forget how it goes, for every additional pound of weight, it's an additional like 5 or 6 pounds on your knees or something like that. I forget how the equation works, but it exacerbates everything. But cool. Well, hey man, here's to getting healthy, right?
Yeah.
Now go drink some beer.
I'll have a couple of lagers or very light pale ales.
There you go. We'll ask you to report on it next week. All right. Anything else for the good of the order, Sean?
Nope. That's it.
All right, man. Well, this is Raging Chickens Out to Coop podcast. Thanks for everybody for joining us. And over the course of the summer, our schedule is going to be we're going to try to keep to our normal schedule. But every once in a while, I know that Sean's going away. You're going away some point later in the summer, right?
I am not. I'm not going anywhere this summer.
Oh, okay. So I've got a couple trips kind of coming out, but I don't think that's going to run in too much. But we'll try to keep you posted from week to week when we know about it. If we're going to switch up our days.
I'm on a vacation for the next 8 months.
He's on staycation. There you go. All right. Well, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Thanks for hanging with us today, folks. And, keep looking out for us. And we want to remind everybody, become a member of Raging Chicken. Become a member by going to our patreon.com/RCPress. $5 a month, everybody. See ya!
Fuck the NRA. Their pro-gun policies have resulted in dead children, dead mothers, and dead fathers. I'm Pat Davis, and I approve this message because if Congress won't change our gun laws, we're changing Congress.